N- Najati Sunmes. So I will kick it over to him. Thank you, and let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Today I'll be presenting my social justice project here. I'm Najati Sunmes from Çanakkale 18 Mart University. I'm currently a master's student in their institution. So I'll be presenting my project on dramatizing children's literature, raising awareness towards social justice issues. And this project was a sub-project of a larger project called Social Justice in ALT, which was funded by US Embassy at Ankara. So first of all, I'd like to give you a brief information about the flow of the presentation. First of all, I'll be focusing on the introduction and rationale behind why I picked drama and children's literature. And secondly, I'll be going with methodology, followed by results. And finally, I'll be giving some suggestions for drama implementation in young learners' classroom. Well, first of all, I'd like to begin with social justice language education. So, social justice language education challenges inequities beyond systems of schooling. So what we're dealing here right now is focusing on the students' socio-cultural and socio-economical backgrounds. We most of the time spend time with planning our lessons, materials for language development of our students, but most of the time students' backgrounds are neglected in our classrooms. And also, in social justice language education, there is this focus on socio-cultural and critical learning and teaching, rather than conventional classroom management. And also, social justice language education aims to disrupt oppression and transform the oppressed groups. So it paves way for social change. And education in social justice education and social justice language education is for collective and individual action. So, rationale behind why I picked drama and children's literature are fivefold. First of all, there's this term called metaxis. So, it's belonging to completely different worlds. Like, we have two worlds. Right now, the physical environment we live in, and the other one, the imaginary world, the world of imagination and world of images. So, with drama, we can bind these two worlds, so we can connect our physical environment to our world of ideas. And secondly, it is a way of, the drama is a way of raising powerful people's voices. And it's actually a fun experience for young learners, especially for young learners. And the combination of drama and children's literature paves way for revealing prejudices and real-life concerns and thoughts of our students, because we get to see the undocumented lives of our students through children's literature and drama. And finally, they pave way for critical thinking and extreme unlimited imagination. So my project aims were threefold. First of all, I aim to raise my young learners' awareness on gender inequality, gender stereotypes, and racism through the combination of children's literature and drama. And secondly, I wanted them to speak English as fluently and accurately as possible. So the Krashen's I+1 theory here. And then thirdly, to establish a community of students to dramatize the social justice issues in front of an audience. Because in Turkey, it's really hard to make students speak because they are afraid of making mispronunciations and using grammar incorrectly. So that's why it was important to build a sense of community. So research questions. Research questions were twofold. Well, first of all, I was the pre-service teacher at that time. I conducted this project back in 2019. So I aim to identify my trajectory as a pre-service language teacher in developing as a social justice language educator, and two, how can the dramatization of children's literature serve as a technique to facilitate language education for social justice? So the two main points for this was that first of all, to focus on social justice awareness of my students, and secondly, the contributions of dramatization of children's literature on their language development. For methodology part, well, the participants were myself and my young learners. So I would like to say that I received undergraduate degree in Karadeniz Technical University, but the courses I've been taught were area-oriented, pedagogical and general culture. So there was actually no focus on social justice language education. And through participating in social justice in ELT project, I received 4 weeks long webinars by professionals, Dr. Deniz Ortaçtepe and Dr. Adnan Yılmaz. And it was an extracurricular endeavor for me. So social justice is not mentioned in curriculum, in language curriculum. And for young learners, I conducted this project in my practicum site at that time. And this project took place from February to May 2019. And my participants were young learners, 12 6th grade students and one 8th grade student. So process was like this. First of all, I formed the cast. I informed my students, all of my students, so who wants to participate in this project. And then I formed the cast, 13 students. And then I created the scripts for 3 books, which I am going to mention later on. And I distributed the scripts to my students. They read the scripts, and I provided feedback through rehearsals. So rehearsals took place for like 2 months. And then I've combined and collected the necessary clothings and the stage to be set. And then demonstration happened. So these were the 3 books I've used in my project. First of all, I will mention briefly about their plot. Well, first of all, the Paperback Princess. In Paperback Princess, a prince is saved by the princess from a dragon. So in second book, William Stone, there's a boy named William who wants to play with feminine toys, and but his father objects him. And thirdly, in Amazing Grace, a black student, an Afro-American student, wants to play Peter Pan, but her friends object her because she's black and she can't play Peter Pan. So as you can see, the roles are reversed in these books from children's literature. So these are some pictures from my project. As you can see in the top 2 right and left corners, there are students reading the scripts. So these were the rehearsals, and I'd like to mention the third image. The bottom left corner. So as you can see, there is this student who acts like a grandma. So as you can tell from the picture, you can say that she plays a grandma. So there are no other sticks or anything. But as you can see from the picture, you can see that it's an old person, it's an old person representation. So that's why drama is important for boosting our students' capabilities and creativity. And in the last picture, I was lecturing my student how to behave more like a dragon. So he was playing dragon. And this was from Paperback Princess. As you can see, there's this dragon and princess. And this was the whole audience. There was the principal, the other colleagues and teachers, and there were students from other classes, and there were their parents. So in this picture, this is after the demonstration. So I gave my students certification. So we had a picture together. Well, as for the data collection tools, for myself, I've used my field notes. I've taken some notes while I was conducting my rehearsals with my students, and then reflection questions, like why did I participate in this project and what I've gained from this project. and what I recommend for future pedagogues or teachers on how to adapt a more social justice language education type approach to language learning and teaching. And for my young learners, there were reflective oral narratives. I collected their testimonies, and then I've conducted semi-structured interviews with them. For data analysis part, I received help from Dr. Ortaçtepe and Dr. Yılmaz. First of all, we gathered the data, and data management happened in a Google Drive folder, and then the formation of emergent ideas happened. So we were like just creating codes like randomly, and then we grouped these codes and themes together, and then data validation happened through member checking. So as for the results, well, first of all, I'd like to focus on my part of the project. Well, as you can see, there are 3 themes. First of all, let's begin with why social justice. Well, I always believed that when I was a practicum teacher, I realized that there was more to language education. So in micro teachings in my department, we were always conducting like activities that were thought to be authentic, and we were creating materials, but we never focused on how students feel in the classroom, what do they bring with them, so we don't focus on them. And I believe that language education should go beyond teaching basic language skills. And secondly, there's this insufficient and limited instruction on social justice language education in teacher education curriculum. I definitely agree that it's insufficient and limited. And thirdly, there are these politically rooted issues in the classroom which should be addressed by the teacher, because education is not a it's a political act. And for critical consciousness, I realized that there was this exclusion of critical issues in a neoliberal dominated education system, because when you look at the textbooks and course books, most of the time, for example, in the unit's kitchen, I realized that the woman was doing everything in the kitchen, so there was this no male figure in the textbook. So that's why indirectly students are thought to believe that, well, women should do the chores in the house. So that's why I believe that education, especially the language education, is dominated by neoliberal approach. And secondly, political participation and empowerment is important. We always come across with people from diverse backgrounds, but they're oppressed. So they should be given voice in a political arena. So they should be involved in political agenda. And the challenges I faced was indoctrination, because the principal at that time in my practicum site believed that, well, this could be dangerous for me. So that's why they always believe that, when my other colleagues believe that, well, social justice could be a kind of tool for indoctrination, so indoctrinating students to believe that, well, LGBTQ exists, and the environmental crisis exists, and gender inequality exists. So for young learners, social justice awareness of young learners, as you can see, there are some codes. I'd like to give you like 20 seconds to look at them, and then I'm going to mention some of the important parts. Okay, as you can see from the first quote, buy a toy freely, forced, and what he wants. So in William Stoll's story, the father was always forcing William to play with more masculine toys. So my student who played William said that, well, I felt that I should play with feminine toys because it's my choice. So that's why I can say that there was this strong identification with the role. And secondly, as you can see, girls or women do not have to act out female roles in a play. They can also perform male roles. So as I mentioned earlier, these books contain reverse roles. So students strongly identify with these roles. And lastly, as you can see, one of the students says that, well, I used to believe that princess was female and thus weak, so she could not save the prince. But this was actually the stereotype, gender stereotype, one of the gender stereotypes. And as you can see, the student overcame her prejudices, let's say, against gender stereotypes. And she gives examples from cartoons that represent gender stereotypes. So we see that there is this critical thinking process happening. Well, young learners' language and self-development. Well, actually, pronunciation improved a lot better than they were. For example, there were these two words, especially eyes and no. So they pronounced eyes as as, and in the word no, there was this strong stress on letter K. So they were saying like kno, kno. So we overcame these problems through rehearsals. And they improved their intonation and pitch, their curiosity and motivation for English improved, and they felt a sense of achievement. So lastly, I'd like to suggest something for promoting drama and critical thinking in young learners' classroom. Well, first of all, the first sentence, creating unique stories with students, this was actually proposed by my students at the end of the project. They said, well, I wish we had like our own space to create stories. So we had like a limited time, but you can always come together with your students and create your own stories. So you can create some inequalities of your own, which would represent your students' background, and then you can overcome these obstacles and prejudices and inequalities through working with them. And establishing communicative sessions. So this should happen in the classroom time, 5 or 10 minutes. If the unit you're lecturing about can be related to social justice topics, you must raise some questions on this. Like I gave example from a kitchen unit. So you can say, when you see that the woman is doing all the chores in the house, so you're going to ask your students, so why is that happening? What do your mom do? What do your father help her? Or why won't your father help your mom? So these types of questions will always lead them to think, well, fathers can also do that. So, and lastly, asking students to act out certain stereotypes and inequalities. I believe this is the strongest kind of advice that I can give. So, but these inequalities and stereotypes should be related to students' backgrounds. If a student is excluded from the classroom just because of her socioeconomic and cultural background, you must create and act towards that problem. If it's about gender inequality, or if it's about LGBTQ, if you have a gay student in your classroom, you can act and a certain stereotype against LGBTQ, and then you can make your students realize that, well, this is problematic and this is wrong. So I'd like to end my presentation with Ball's quotation from Ball's Theatre of the Oppressed. Perhaps the theatre is not revolutionary in itself, but have no doubts it is a rehearsal of a revolution. So thank you for listening. These are my contact address, Gmail address, and for more detailed information, you can refer to socialjusticein.elt.com. Thank you so much.